You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Dan Mufson. Dan is a composer, songwriter, remixer, and record producer. His career has spanned over 10 years, and his professional activities have run the gamut of commercials, TV and film scoring, performing, and record producing. Dan has hundreds of commercials to his credits for brands including Under Armour, Coke, McDonald's, MLB, Estee Lauder, Kellogg's, IBM, Droid, Facebook, Target, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, and Google. He is also half of the indie pop band Scavenger Hunt, with over 20 million streams to date and critical acclaim from Billboard, Neon Gold, Indie Shuffle, and Pigeons and Planes. In the studio, Dan has collaborated with artists Loud Luxury, RAC, The Midnight, Muna, Betty Who, Rachel Yamagata, Panama Wedding, Savior Adore, Great Good, Fine, OK, Estero, and Capital Cities. Former Secret Sonics guest Ami Kozak suggested I reach out to Dan, and Dan's been so gracious with me, so I'm psyched to introduce him to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Ben, shalom. Good to be here.
It's awesome to have you here. So tell us a bit about how you got started getting involved in music production.
So I kind of fell into it. A lot of people ask me, how did you get started or what can I do? I was lucky enough where I had always been really interested in sound and music, and I played everything from guitar to turntables. And basically, when I was in high school, the music program had a DAT recording machine, which to most people today sounds like something like a typewriter or some old rotary telephone. But this was a DAT recording machine that allowed us to do multi-track for the students. And no one was really interested in it. Basically, I took an interest. Instead of having to do a sport, I convinced the school to let me learn how to use the recording studio. And that's kind of where my love affair started with music production, and it kind of became an obsession, to be honest.
Yeah, that's like a typical thing, right? Like we start to like uncover what music production is, and it becomes an obsession pretty quickly.
For sure. So, ironically, my parents sent me to boarding school, and at the boarding school they had this recording DAT machine that I mentioned. But that year for the holidays, my parents gifted me the Generation 1 M-Box, which was a game changer. So I had Pro Tools in my dorm room, and I didn't really do much work, and I just was constantly making music. And after 2 years, I said to my parents, hey, this isn't really working out, the whole college thing, but I really love making music and recording, so give me a chance to check that out. And they were luckily very supportive and said, all right, well, we'll give you a little time. If you make it work, great. If not, your butt's going back to college. So I never went back to college.
Wow. That's amazing. I love that. Was there a song or album that really opened your mind to the possibilities of what could be accomplished with music productions?
That's a great question, because I feel like one of the biggest struggles that I had when I first started in this phase that you just asked me about was trying to recreate these records that I love so much and not understanding the fundamentals of audio that would allow me to bridge the gap. Like why the music I was making in my dorm room didn't sound like the Roots, Things Fall Apart.
Yeah.
Or OK Computer, Radiohead.
That's like big one for me also.
So I guess I'd say OK Computer was one of the first times I think I was old enough to listen and kind of say, like, how are they doing that? Or I would love to figure that out.
Wow, amazing. And how did you get yourself up to snuff, so to speak?
Well, these are great questions. When I left college, I wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to leave college and maybe live in a van down by the river. I enrolled in a SAE, which was in Manhattan at the time, because I was in college in Long Island, Hofstra University. So SAE is really where I learned the basics and compression and EQing and a lot of that stuff that's so important. And this was pre-YouTube era. So if you wanted to learn this stuff, you really had to go to school for it at the time. There unfortunately was no online community for learning this stuff.
That's true. We live in an amazing era now.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell us a bit about what you're up to these days.
So now I live in Los Angeles, and my focus is writing music for brands and TV and film. And I'm lucky enough to be very busy pursuing these opportunities. Mostly advertising, I'd say, keeps me the busiest.
Amazing. And you're also half of a duo called Scavenger Hunt. Can you tell us a bit about that?
For sure. Scavenger Hunt's this really exciting organic project that I started with my bandmate Jill Lamoureux in 2012. We met, I saw her performing. She and her husband were an acoustic duo, and it was very different from what we do as Scavenger Hunt. And I approached her and said, hey, I sometimes work with singers on ads. Would you be interested in lending your vocals to something? And she came over, we wrote a song for a perfume brand, and it was just so easy working with her. I said, hey, we should just like write music sometime and see what happens. And I wrote a track, and I was like, okay, this could be cool. And she came in and sang on it, and within a couple of minutes, we had this song called Lost, and that just kind of started this whole process of putting out music. And Lost was really exciting because it's been featured in a bunch of TV shows and films.
Wow.
And it's had a bunch of streams. From that one song, we were able to sign with Rock Nation for management, and went on a tour with a band called Capital Cities, who had a huge hit at the same time in about 2012, 2013, called Safe and Sound, which I think probably ranked very high on the Billboard charts. That was a big hit. So it was very exciting. We went on tour. That's the long version of Scavenger Hunt. But Scavenger Hunt's also a really exciting way for me to make music for me, not necessarily for brands, with a brief, getting revisions from a client. So it's really nice to have that break to collaborate with Jill. And she's amazing. I mean, she's an incredible vocalist. She's an incredible lyricist. She's an incredible vocal arranger. I mean, she's the real deal. Yeah. She's a very hardworking musician too. I don't think I'd be able to be in anything like this unless we were both giving 100%.
Amazing. Well, so what's your role in Scavenger Hunt?
I would say Jill's the lyricist and vocalist and front woman, and I'm more the mysterious weird guy that is playing synths, and I do the production and the co-writing with Jill.
I love it.
So it's a good balance of talents.
So how does the collaboration and the songwriting happen with you guys?
Typically, I'll write a track and she'll hear it and she'll loop it, and I'll leave the room and I'll come back and she's got something amazing. It's pretty easy. We're very lucky to have such a great creative collaboration.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
I mean, there's also times when, because of the exciting opportunities and things that we've seen our music do, it also makes it hard because we do have high expectations. So a lot of times we'll start ideas and sometimes they just don't feel like they're good enough, at least for me.
Yeah.
Specifically the music. I feel like I'm harder on myself because there are now expectations. So that can be a good thing, but I think that can also sometimes be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly.
So I love the 80s influence in that music. Can you give us some details about how you go about getting that feel in the music?
Yeah, I think I've always loved music from the 80s. I know Jill has too. We're both 80s kids, 80s babies. Ironically, I'm a guitar player first and foremost. That's my first instrument, but for Scavenger Hunt, it's really much more synth heavy. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about music from that era that I think just brings me to a kind of a happy place. So it's a lot of synthesizers, live bass, live guitars, percussion. There's something about this nostalgic 80s thing that reminds me of some of my favorite movies and TV shows, and I'm sure there's something more to it, like, you know, it's this happy time when we were kids, and
yeah,
I don't know, it just resonates.
It's funny, I was going to ask you about the percussion that you just mentioned. Like, I think that really is like a signature mark on that music. The percussion sounds really cool. So, do you mind like getting into the creative process of how you come about coming up with those parts and those sounds and stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a whole, right in front of me here, a whole big basket full of percussive instruments. I really love playing live percussion on tracks. I think it adds a lot. You can do weird stuff with it. I mean, I think a lot of that music is so rhythmically focused. So a lot of that 80s music was kind of taking stuff from the 60s. It's a lot of focus of R&B, whether it's the Whitney stuff, Lionel Richie. That's some of my favorite stuff. Hall & Oates. I mean, that's that's soul music that's been turned into kind of computerized MIDI.
Yeah.
So percussion's a huge part to the Scavenger Hunt vibe.
Uh-huh. So how does it work for you? You just kind of like will come up with a beat. Is that the first thing that you do when you're building a track?
I think so. Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's the beat for sure. I think drums are a huge part of anything I do, whether I'm starting a Scavenger Hunt track or I'm starting a track for a television show or a brand. To me, drums are like so important. But yeah, it'll usually start with some sort of drum groove and then probably just layering. I think layering's a big part of it. Layering tambourines, shakers, claps. Claps are huge. There's actually one sample that I recorded claps at a studio in Colorado, and my dad was with me. We recorded in this, it was a very high-end studio outside of Aspen, and this one room was literally designed for percussion. So we recorded some percussion there, and my dad and I did some claps. Anyway, I call it the dad clap, and I use it in almost every track.
Wow. It's amazing. There's something special about having your own samples that you can like 100%. Throw in. Wow. Actually,
just recently, in the last year, Jill and I created a sample pack for Splice called Scavenger Hunt Nostalgic, Future Nostalgic. And that was really fun because it's literally all the stuff that we're talking about right now, but making sounds for other people to be creative with.
That's amazing. I will definitely drop a link to that in the show notes so people can have a look.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
So what do you look for when you're collaborating with another artist to work with?
When you hear a new musician or you're exposed to a new artist, it's very much like going out on a date or meeting a new friend. It's an immediate response. I have a hard time with having to listen to things multiple times or seeing an artist live 5 times. I feel like if it's not great on the start, there's just too much noise out there. So I think, like, for example, Jill, when I heard her performing for the first time, I was like, my mouth was on the floor. I could not believe that these live vocals were coming out of this person. And it was like, there was no auto-tune. It was just a dry vocal in a bar.
Uh-huh.
So I would say I have to be excited and be a fan before I would want to pursue collaborating, because I think you really have to like love and respect what that person's already doing. So for me, it's like this natural thing that someone has already that you could only add to. I think if you have to completely gut it and change it, it's not, for me, I wouldn't even know how to collaborate with someone like that.
Wow. And when you listen to a song for the first time, what are you listening for exactly?
I think originality, but yet something that's like very honed. So it's almost like kind of sloppy, but still like very clean. If that makes, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Like when you're listening to an artist, you can hear the integrity of the artist, even if it needs a little bit of like fine tuning in the studio. But you can hear that there's something raw that has like that's focused enough to like take to the next level. That's like, I guess, what I'm hearing. What you're saying.
Yeah, that's I think what I'm saying is like pitch perfect isn't necessarily what I would go for. I think it's more someone having this kind of intriguing vibe, but yet still being musical.
Yeah, for sure. So how is writing for commercials different from writing pop music? Does your approach change?
I think they both really helped me a lot, but writing for commercials I find to be very easy because there's a clear vision and a path. I think sometimes it can be very different. It's almost like I sometimes say that I'm kind of like a musical plumber when it comes to the ads. I have a job to do. It is to unclog this toilet, fix the broken sink. You know, it's a very clear-cut thing that needs to happen there. Whereas when you're writing a song, there's not a brief. There's not necessarily a client that you have to please. Sometimes there are multiple clients you have to please. You have your manager. Sometimes there's the label, the publisher. But that's also really nice because Jill and I, other than having some management early on, we've always been independent artists. So we've always been allowed to put out music when we want, how we want. Maybe that's a problem sometimes. If you asked her, I don't know what she'd say. But I find them to be very different. I do. Even though it's sonically they sound a lot alike, the process for me is very different.
Interesting. So you have like a similar trademark sound even though the approach is completely different.
Exactly.
Awesome. So can we go through like